Okay, in today's video we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to first install the flywheel, and then we're going to pick up a week or two from now. We're going to install the top end, then we're going to install the stator cover. Let's start by installing the flywheel. We're going to need a couple of tools. We're going to need a T-handle, but not for reasons you might think. We're going to need a torque wrench. We're going to need Loctite. This is Loctite 243. We're going to need the magneto, or the flywheel, and the flywheel nut, and the washers, and the Woodruff key. Funny story about the Woodruff key. So what happened was I misplaced this key, and I didn't know where it was. So when I made my last order from SuzukiPartsHouse.com, I ordered a flywheel key. Well, the part they sent me was the wrong part. I'll compare the two in my palm here. Holy crap. They grabbed the wrong... I ordered the right part, but they sent me the wrong one. It's a $2 part, whatever. Anyway, I got a little frustrated, so I'm like, you know what? This key has got to be here somewhere. So I took the towel, I took everything off the cart, I lifted the towel up, and I unfolded it, and it fell right out of the friggin' towel. Go figure. It was here all along. Now, we're going to drop that right into our crankshaft. Going to pop our flywheel on. Come on. Let's try getting it lined up this time. That should do it. There it is. There she is. Okay. Next, we're going to put our washer and the lock washer. Put that in there. Okay, then we're going to take I got a brand new flywheel nut. Didn't really need it, but Put a little bit of thread locker on there, not too much. That's probably too much. Take a little bit of that out. I'm going to get this on there. We're going to need the flywheel on here to rotate the crankshaft, to make it easier to rotate the crankshaft when installing the new piston. I can't do that until I get the new top end kit from, I bought it from Treatland.tv. They're not getting any money for this. And I'm not getting any money for this. Let me rephrase that. This is not a paid endorsement of anything. Just so you know. We're going to take this towel. We're going to put it right over our crankshaft. I'm sorry, our crankcase deck, just to protect it a little bit. I'm going to put this T-handle into the crank connecting rod. Sorry. The towel's just to protect the surface of the deck, that's all. Not really necessary, but I'm going to get this finger tight. Okay. I'm going to take our 17mm socket, put it on our torque wrench. We're going to dial the torque wrench to 23 pound-feet of torque. So we're going to loosen the locking nut, and we're going to dial this in. So right now we're set to, it should be foot-pounds, there we go. 0, we want it at 20 pounds. It's actually a pretty low setting. Wait a minute. It would be 10, that's 10, that's 22, 3. 23 foot-pounds. That's not a lot of torque. And here we go. There we go. 23 foot-pounds of torque. Let out. That shouldn't have damaged anything. Now the flywheel and the crankshaft are one and done. And there you go. As a word to the wise, never store a torque wrench that's loaded. You want to unload it by bringing it down to 0 like that, and then just hit the lock on it. If you leave a torque wrench under tension like that, you can actually screw up the calibration by compressing the springs and such inside. Now, what am I going to do with this Woodruff key? Hell if I know. Maybe if I get a Suzuki 2-liter something, whatever, I don't know what it fits, but maybe then I'll... I mean, I'm not going to bother selling a $2 Woodruff key. If anybody wants it, I'll send it to you. Send me self-addressed stamped envelope. And I'm going to keep this extra flywheel nut just in case I ever need it. This spark plug we're going to use when we get it running, and then I'll put a brand new one in. But this is a good plug. I'm going to just clean it up, and we're going to use it when we get the engine running again. So that'll be the one that I use to dial in the carburetor and get everything set up right. Everything else is garbage. Alright, so we'll be picking this up when the rest of our top end parts come in. I've got a new... I could reuse the original bearing if I wanted to, but I've got a brand new crank... small end bearing, sorry. Not a new small end bearing. And we'll get the top end on there. And you know, once that's done, this engine will almost be ready to start up. In fact, I'm not going to mount it into the frame until the top end is installed. Because it's easier to do a top end installation while it's off the bike. I've seen a lot of videos where guys are doing this while it's in the bike. And you can do that. But this is so much easier since it's already apart. See you when those parts come. We got treats. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. Sorry. This box should contain that whole thing. Let's take a look. Treatland is known for their clever and creative packaging and throwing random objects in boxes. They did not disappoint. They packaged this with Victoria's Secret packing tape. The only thing is, I had to explain that to my coworkers because I had this shipped to work, which yeah. So let's take a look at what we got. Alright, we got a K-Star Suzuki FZ50 FA50 45mm kit. We got 2 Polini stickers. That would be the extra. And we got an invoice. Packaging. Pretty basic. Straightforward. But did it work? Did it protect our precious cargo during shipment? Well, let's take a look. So in the box we get our base gasket, head gasket, candy wrapper, got an exhaust gasket, and a carburetor gasket. It's actually a better one than the one I already have. Excellent. I like that. I like that very much. You'll notice that the base gasket is a thin copper gasket. These are the ones that are used to obtain higher compression ratios by reducing the combustion chamber size. Alright, let's take a look at the goods. Oh, we got a wrist pin. And it looks like they preloaded the piston into the bore, but immediately you should have actually... Oh, this one got broken too. Check this out. We have a broken fin. Uh-oh. And it looks like we got another broken fin. That's a problem. That's a problem. It got damaged in shipment. I already unpacked it earlier today. I was just trying to lead up to this. I didn't notice that this fin was broken too. This one, just a good whack and it'll just come right off. Hi-ya! Should just, you know, pop off. Now, if this was purchased from, you know, an unscrupulous reseller, there is a possibility that I would have to weld these on, and I could do that. This is a cast iron bore. These can be welded on. It's not that big a deal, but because I bought this new from a legitimate reseller, I did reach out to them, and they are more than happy to send me a brand new bore. They're going to send me just the bore and nothing else, so I'm going to actually have to pull this piston out. Now, if this part were not damaged, I would be putting it on for real, but it's damaged in a big way, so I'm not putting it on for real. Oh, that's so pretty. Oh, that's so nice. I love it. If only it were good. If only it were usable. Okay. So it looks like this is really just a copy of an original bore. As a matter of fact, it's stamped on the side 49 centimeters cubed. So this actually started out life as a 49 cc. And what they did is they bored it out. You'll notice that the thickness of the bore walls is incredibly thin. In fact, we'll use our handy-dandy calipers and we'll see just how much thinner. You couldn't bore this thing out any more than they've done it. So it looks to me like the thickness of this wall is now 2.64 mil, whereas it originally started out at around 4.24. So, you know, like I said, this is an original 50cc duplicate or replica that had been bored out, and that's how they're able to make this work. They didn't make this from scratch as a 60cc or 59cc bore. So that's how they do it. And yeah, so the new one will be coming, I hope, in about a week, at least. It'll be about a week. Let's talk a little bit about rims and how to inspect drum brakes for wear. So what we have here is my front rim, duh, and it's painted silver. Now this was the original color for this rim, but this is not the original paint. Somebody actually painted this or repainted it at some point. The rear wheel was very much the same. I like the style of this rim. It's very late 70s, early 80s. It's a star pattern, two-piece rim, and I like it. I think it looks nice. But, you know, I decided to go in a different direction, color-wise. The silver just wasn't doing it for me. So, let's take a look at what I chose. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you is the rim. Ta-da! White. I went with white. We're not done. Let's take a look at the hub. Did I go for two colors or just one solid color? Well, here we go. Yep, he did it again. So I went with white on white. A lot of people have chosen to do, you know, two color schemes. You know, like a black rim with a white hub, or a red rim with a white hub, or a white rim with a black hub. I mean, you can go either way with it. The great thing about these two-piece rims is that they're very easy to paint because you can disassemble them, and you can do multiple colors, schemes, whatever. The choice is yours. Now, the paint that I used for this is Duplicolor alloy wheel paint. This is a very tough enamel. It can withstand some serious abuse. I've used it in other projects, and as a matter of fact, I used a competing product, VHT wheel paint, for the aluminum engine covers. So we're going to reassemble this wheel. Actually goes in this way. Pretty easy wheel to put together. We're going to use a torque wrench, and we're going to be popping in the bolts. Where did I put those? There. So while we're waiting for our new top end again, we're going to try to find other things to do. So how does it go together? Well, quite easy, dear Watson. Basically, you toss the bolts in like that. And we're going to do one first just to get it together. That's going to look nice. There's a lock washer and a nut. Like that. We're going to put them all in hand tight first, and then we'll torque them down for real. So I just got back from my parents' house where I cleaned up all of these bolts with a wire wheel. Torquing the rear wheel to the proper spec. Now, one of the most important aspects of this is you want each one to be the exact same tension. That's how I see it, and that's what I'm going to try to achieve here. So, but it's not like torquing a cylinder head where, you know, it's absolutely critical that. There we go. There we go. Okay, that's not that tight. I mean, that's about 12 foot-pounds. That's not a lot. Now, one of the reasons that Suzuki, Honda, Yamaha, and many others... Wait, did I get it? Yeah, I did. I'm going to actually go back. I think I over-torqued it. One of the reasons that they went with two-piece rims was because the theory was, and I believe, that... Hold on. I believe the theory was it allowed the owner to replace only the center hub, which houses the brake drum, in the event that the brake drum were to wear out. They would not need to replace the entire wheel. But it was also more than likely a design decision. It allowed them to produce, at a lower cost, several different designs of the center part with just one standard rim. Just a theory. I'm probably wrong. I usually am. There we go. There we go. That was easy. So that's, again, 12 foot-pounds on all 5 bolts. And we're going to unload our torque wrench as we had earlier and move on to our next thing. So, how do you tell if your brake drum is still good? Well, fortunately, I put 40,000 miles on a Honda Helix. And actually, I put 30,000 of those 44,000 miles or so. In that time, the rear brake drum never wore out, ever. It just didn't wear out. And that's because there's not a lot going on here. There's not a lot of braking going on. Not a lot of wear and tear going on in this drum. So a little bit of overspray in there that'll wear out pretty quickly. Anyway, there's not a lot really to write home about in these brakes, these drum brakes that they use. They're such a simple design. There's so much brake pad there that it's not really, doesn't get very hot. But you ask, so I'm going to tell you. Every brake drum, including automotive brake drums, have a minimum diameter. I'm sorry, a maximum diameter stamped into the metal. This is 100.7 millimeters is the maximum diameter, inner diameter. So what that means is as the brake drum wears out, it actually gets a little bit bigger over time. I have not seen one that was out of spec, like ever. You would have to have maybe, I don't know, 100,000 miles on this sucker to get that worn out to that level. So we're going to use our caliper, digital caliper, to measure the inner diameter. This is not really the right tool. There are better tools to use for this. but this is good enough for government work. You remember our maximum diameter. Now you want to get the measurement down into the drum, not the edge. You want to get it down in there where the wear is happening. So these calipers have kind of like a ledge on them, which helps kind of get deeper in there. So we're not going to get an exact measurement with this tool. There are better tools. My father might have something. He's a machinist, so he would have a better. I got 99.97 millimeters is what I'm getting out of this. So that is well within spec. In fact, yesterday I think I got a little bit higher. Yeah, I got 100.04. 100.7 is our max. So we're in good shape here. This brake drum is good to go. Now, you can also measure the thickness of the brake pads. That's also a good idea at this time while everything's apart, just to make sure they're still good. One way to measure the thickness of your brake shoes is to measure the entire brake shoe with the backer and the liner together. Then, let's see here, we got a total thickness of 7.70 millimeters. So 7.7, I'll write that down. Then you want to measure the thickness of the backer by itself. And that's going to be something like, oh, you know what, it's tapered a little bit. 4.67. So 7.7 minus 4.67. Before we mount the rear wheel, I want to check about one more thing. Off camera, I went ahead and I removed our brake cam lever, and I cleaned up and greased the cam pin so that it moves a lot more freely. I also added a dab of, and this is what I used for lubricant. This is Silglide brake lubricant. It's great for automotive caliper slides and other things. I applied some of that to the brake cam as well as the end of the cam where it hits the brake shoes. This is a great lubricant. It's thick, sticky, and heat resistant, so it's good for high temperatures. So there should be a castle nut, a cotter pin, and a washer. I've got the castle nut right here. A castle nut is called a castle nut because it looks like a castle. Anyway, so let's grab that wheel. We're already taking care of this. Let's grab our wheel. But there's one step I need to do before I slide it onto the spline shaft. And this is something that a lot of people learn the hard way. Or they're buying an older project and somebody else has been in there and didn't do this. Take a little bit of grease. I'm going to use my brake caliper grease because I have it here. And just put a thin coat of that on your spline shaft. And that's going to make the wheel come off just that much easier next time I do this. Because the rear wheel is made of cast iron, or the brake drum is, it will rust. And because this shaft is made out of a high-strength steel or iron, it will also rust, and yeah, that happens. Okay, so let's get this wheel on. In my hands here. There we go. That wheel is now installed. Well, kind of. Put our washer in place. We'll get our castle nut nice and torqued down. There we go. I think that was a 17 millimeter. Let me grab my 17 millimeter socket. Alright. Now we're going to find out what the torque specs are. We're going to torque it in place. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to tighten this to the torque of 30 foot-pounds. Alright, 30 foot-pounds, here we go. There we go. Now, we also want to back this nut off just a tad so that we can get that cotter pin hole lined up with the castle nut. Just a little bit. A little more. Easy does it. There we go. Now we can get that cotter pin in there. I've already custom cut a brand new pin for it. There we are. Now this wheel is actually going to come right back off again as soon as I get this thing rolling, because I got to change this tire, which is why you see some overspray on it. I'm going to change it out anyway, so that's why I didn't bother masking it off that well. So I'm going to just put this cotter pin on just a little bit so that it won't fall out, so I'll be able to pull the wheel when the time comes. Alright, I don't think there's anything else I can do right here. Yeah, this wheel has just a little bit of play on it, and that's because the axle is supported by a ball bearing, a sealed ball bearing. That's brand new, by the way. But those ball bearings do have a little bit of lateral wiggle to them. Roller bearings don't, as far as I know, but these do. And for whatever reason, Suzuki never bothered to put a bearing on the other side of the axle where it goes into the transmission case cover. It's actually held in by a not even a bronze bushing, nothing. There's just a hole for the axle to slide into, and that's it. There's no bearing or anything. So I find that intriguing that they would do that, but hey, whatever. It's lasted this long. So we've got our flywheel installed. We've got our rear wheel. We've got our brakes. So I'm just filling this thing up right now because I don't want to forget to do it later. I'm going to get all excited. I'm going to get the engine together and all the parts are going to come in and everything's going to be happy, and I'm going to start it up and I'm going to drive it around and I'm going to seize this bearing. Not to mention untold damage to the transmission, but that's besides the point. Alright. So right now I've measured out just about 800 milliliters of oil. I'm going to pour a little more out. This way I'm not going to overfill it. Now there's a check screw mounted, if you remove this screw here, when the engine is level like this, if you overfill it, it'll actually come out of that screw. And that's also how you can tell what the level is. So you just pour in oil until it comes out. So at this point, our transmission case gasket should be fully cured. It's been about a week, and or almost a week. So that should be fully cured by now. We've got all new seals. We should be good. But I don't want to forget to put oil in this baby, because that would just ruin my day. Having to destroy an engine that I just put together. But yeah, I'm used to working on, you know, 4-stroke CVT belted scooters, and I had one CVT 2-stroke 50cc Chinese scooter at one point in my life. And I would have totally forgotten to do this, thinking, you know, what I'm used to is one thing and this is another. I'm going to let this sit for a little bit, let that oil drip out. There should be, you know, plentiful amounts of oil in that. Eventually the oil will make its way to our kickstart mechanism and everything else. So what's got to happen is you've got to get the engine started. Once the wheel starts spinning, it's going to sling that oil all over the place. It's going to get into the crankshaft bearing. It's going to lubricate that all nice and happy, and it's going to be a good time. It's going to be a good time. Yeah. So the oil level should be somewhere around here. And what that's going to do is, as soon as that chain starts spinning and those gears start turning, it just takes that oil and it just slings it everywhere. And that's going to happen. So, and there should be no leaks Like I said, this is sealed really well, so I'm pretty confident about that. Now for my next trick, what we're going to do is try to get some of this two-stroke oil in there. I want to pre-oil the flywheel side bearing and the big end bearing with a little bit of two-stroke oil. And the idea that I have here is I'm going to take this tube, stick it in the oil, put my finger over the end, right? You don't want too much. You just want to prevent a dry startup, you know, using inferior oils. Just to prevent flash rust, I basically use some 3-in-1 oil on these bearings during reassembly, because that's all I had on hand. I didn't actually have any two-stroke oil, so I wanted to pre-oil this engine a little bit, just to prevent a dry startup. So we got the big end bearing all squared away. It's gonna be nice and smooth, and we're gonna put a little bit in the flywheel side bearing, but that's gonna be a little bit harder. I'm gonna have to dribble it in, because I already put the intake in place, and I don't want to pour it down the the normal oil port, because I could potentially clog it. But I'm going to hold the engine up like this. This is more acrobatic than it looks. I'm going to take my little oil straw, dip it in the oil bottle again, like that. Take out a little more than that. Alright, that's enough. We're going to dribble that oil right alongside the crank there. This thing is going to smoke like a son of a bitch on startup, but at least it won't burn those bearings up, I hope. I'm going to turn the crank a little bit. Get it in there. And that should get it where it needs to be. Probably should have done that before I put the seal in place, but you know, hindsight being what it is. Let's see if I can do this again. I'm going to do it one more time just to be safe. We don't want a dry startup. That would really ruin my day. We also don't want to foul the plug. Put it like that. There we go. You don't want to foul the plug either, you know. So there's a balance between too little and too much. But I do not want to run the risk of frying my new engine. That would really piss me off in a big way. So. But we're getting to the point now where this thing is almost ready to fire. I'm just waiting for, you know what, I have enough parts on hand to make it run right now, but let's do this right. So all these bearings should be lubed and happy and free to do their job. Including the big end bearing, the small end bearing isn't even here yet. I've got an old one, but I'm not going to use it. We should be good to go. Probably going to smoke like a, well, like the like something that's on fire. It's late. I'm not thinking. But you know what I mean. Okay. Right. Okay, we left off on I think it was a Thursday or Friday. Today is now Monday, and this just arrived. This is a replacement cylinder from our friends at Treatland.tv, and no, they are not paying me for this. They're getting free coverage from this project. They're very nice guys to work with. Very quick to respond if you have a concern with your order. They shipped this sucker out immediately after I filed a claim, and you know, very apologetic, and I got to keep the other cylinder. They don't want it back, so I might end up repairing it as a spare. But I've already dropped the piston in. It seems to fit, of course, so it's the right size bore, thank God. And once I get the wrist pin bearing from SuzukiPartsHouse.com, we will be able to install this. I could use the original wrist pin bearing. I have decided not to as a result of the evident damage that was done to it from heat. I mean, it was exposed to a lot of heat, so I don't think it's worth reusing it. So, like I said, they only sent the bore, nothing else, because the piston's still good, and so is all this other stuff. So, anyway, they very quickly sent it out. A little word of caution when ordering from Treatland. They are fun people. They like to have fun. They like to play jokes. And that's great. I'm okay with that. However, if you have the stuff shipped to your place of employment, just be warned that it may arrive in a Victoria's Secret box. No reason why. I just, yeah, that was awkward. But no, it was all good. They literally shipped my order in a box that was taped shut with Victoria's Secret packing tape. I don't know where they got it from. I don't want to know. I don't care. But just be warned, if you order stuff and have it shipped to your place of employment, you don't know what's in the box and you don't know what's going to be on the box. So just you know, put that under your hat. The ladies in the front office at work had a lot of fun with that one. I got an email. Your Victoria's Secret package arrived. I'm like, oh God, no, they didn't. We had a good laugh. So, and I heard one story of someone, they actually wound up with a box of Kung Fu tapes or something like that. VHS tapes. They like to have fun, and that's great. It's good that there's companies out there like that, you know. I think it's great. Refreshing in a way. Moving on. I reached out to Rust-Oleum, and they're not paying me for this. They don't know I'm doing this and giving them free publicity, but I did reach out to Rust-Oleum. I'm trying to find a paint that will closely match the existing, I forget the name of this color, the color code. It's at 07P is the color code. There's nothing on the market today that will link up directly to this color code. I can have paint made for about $40 a can. I can pay my local paint supplier to make me a can, a pre-pressurized rattle can of 07P. But I don't want to spend $40 on paint. Screw that. I'm going to try to save a few bucks. I've only got to paint a few small pieces. I have one side cover. I have the handlebar, the headlamp housing, and I've got the fuel tank. Two requirements. It's got to match, not exactly, because none of the parts in the bike match anyway. They're just a few shades off. I mean, really, it's 37 years old. What do you expect? So it's got to be close. It also has to be fuel resistant. More on that later. So this is the book of paint colors that Rust-Oleum offers in all of their products. This is their general paint products, and this is their automotive. The automotive, there's nothing there that I can use because really people aren't painting their cars with Rust-Oleum anymore. So they don't have like a whole big page of different colors that they offer. They have a few, but they're very slim pickings. They've got, you know, engine paint. They've got, what? Red, black, and black automotive paint. Acrylic lacquer. Black, gloss, and clear. So, you know, there's not a lot of options. They do have this acrylic enamel 2X paint and primer, but there's also a similar product in the general paint catalog as well. And they only offer this in gloss cherry red. That's the closest they offer there. But it's not that close. Now these catalogs are not, you know, official color chips, but they're printed with color matching in mind. they know people are going to be picking colors from this book, expecting, you know, certain results. So, you know, given the fact that we're dealing with $5 a can paint, and this is a catalog they mailed to me for free, this is going to be close but not perfect. And I understand that. I don't want to pay $40 for a can of paint. That's kind of where I'm at. So where are we at? I did find that Carnival Red is a pretty close match. As close as I'm going to get. It's hard to really do. I mean, you got to have the right lighting and everything. It's either Carnival or Sunrise Red will be our best bet. Now, Cherry Red's not too far off, but it needs to be just a hair darker, and that's where I'm going to probably go with the Sunrise Red. No, you know what? I'm thinking Cherry Red would be a good match. It's close enough to where people won't gawk at it, you know? They've got some nice colors here. Emerald green. I mean, you can't buy these colors in the store. They don't sell them. It's unfortunate that you can't buy these colors. Not in most stores. I mean, you know, we only have a small selection of this stuff. Now here's a lot of different shades of red we've got. Now these are satin and gloss, so you got to make sure you pick the right one. Gloss apple red. That might be even closer. You know, I'm thinking gloss apple red is what I need. That's going to be our, that's where the money's at right there. Gloss apple red. Gloss apple red. Yeah, you know, I think we've got our match. And that is offered in the 2X Ultra Cover Spray Enamel. That's a thicker paint. They call it paint and primer, but it's just thick paint, really. What it is. Got a lot of products. So gloss apple red. I think I'm going to pick up a can of that. If that doesn't work, I'll try something else. It's going to cost me about I think it's about $10, $7 to $10 a can. So still beats 40. All right, moving on. In our next video, hopefully top end goes on. We'll see what other items come in my box. I might be able to put the carburetor together for once. That'll be nice. Get the carburetor installed. Reassembled, installed. I had to pick up another torque wrench. I wanted to pick up a light duty torque wrench for the head bolts. This is a Harbor Freight 3/8 drive torque wrench. This particular torque wrench has, being a Harbor Freight product, it's probably calibrated to within 10 pounds plus or minus. So hopefully it won't shear the bolts off. Okay, off we go.